Oh, sweet. It's the Mandalorian tonight.
Who's hyped for The Mandalorian? I certainly am. Welcome, everybody, to the Legion Academy live stream slash podcast slash extravaganza. This is the first time we're going to do the podcast as a live stream, and we're really excited about it, and we hope you guys enjoy it. So, how you doing this week, Sean? Are you hyped for The Mandalorian? Because I certainly am.
I'm pretty excited about the Mandalorian. I gave my wife the spiel today about we needed to add yet another service to our cable provider. She told me I need to cut some things down, so gonna figure out some ways to cut some stuff. I also added Apple TV today too, so I'm kind of moving in the other direction. But I'm excited to add Disney Plus to the service so I can watch Mandalorian and
And
Clone
Clone
and Clone
Wars.
Wars. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fair.
So we're certainly going to be talking a lot about Clone Wars this episode, just like last episode. We're going to kind of treat this as a part two to our Clone Wars core set rules discussion. Hopefully, you can benefit from it if you're a new player or a veteran player alike. And we're going to use this opportunity to give you guys a visual demonstration of everything in this format. So not only can you find this as the normal weekly podcast, we're going to put the audio up as the normal podcast. But every week, starting now, we're also going to do this live stream. And so we can actually show you guys what we're talking about live. And we'll put this up on our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to find the archive on Facebook and stuff. So we're really excited about this new format. And Sean's done a ton of awesome work on it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about getting the terrain ready, getting everything ready, like how much we've been dealing with like test runs of this and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess along with that, I would really appreciate if you guys in the comments can let us know kind of what the sound's coming like, what the visual quality is like, because truthfully that's what I've been working on a lot this week. So we're gonna take you guys through some of our camera shots here. So we have a couple. It won't just be Joe and my face here up the whole time, but we do have we got a kind of close camera set up here beside us that we can have a look at, as Joe said, some visual demonstrations. We got some full screen as well. We can actually do some videos within the player as well. So if we got some tutorials in the future, we can kind of show you guys those, kind of move it along, scrub through, and give you some timestamps as well. We plan to do some screen sharing with you. So when we're talking about things on Tabletop Admiral and we're bringing up those cards or those lists that we kind of often talk about, we want to build those live with you guys so you guys can truthfully interact with us as much as possible. That's one of the things that we kind of missed with the audio cast, is it's kind of a standalone. It's very passive. We put up some stuff, we let people listen to it. You guys come back and tell us the week later or through the week. And we're kind of, I feel that we're a little removed from the community in that way. So we talked about this. We put a lot of work into, you can't see what's around me, but basically if I move 6 inches left or right, I'm going to knock over something. There's a lot of stands and lights and cameras around here, but hopefully it's going to pay off for you guys, and you guys will think the stream is pretty good. So that was basically my weekend here. I've had roughly a 4-day weekend, and I spent most of it just getting ready for the cast, especially yesterday. So
Yeah, why don't you show them the camera angles and stuff that we've got going on?
sure. All right. So we'll bring you guys back. At this point, you guys should be able to see that's our title screen there. So this is kind of the thing that we'll use to sort of preview or preface our stream. So if you guys see this in the coming weeks, just know that's kind of an indicator that we have a stream dropping. And we're going to have some additional streams besides just the podcast. So just kind of pay attention to what's on the screen there. May do some unboxings or some bat reps through the week as well. Take you back to the main one. So this is just for me. If I happen to be kind of sharing something, kind of talk a little bit more personally with you in this scene here, you guys can see my pop filter here, but that's just because I want it close to me. But that's just one of our cameras here. Hopefully the quality is pretty good. I didn't see any comments about that, so it's either you guys aren't seeing anything or it looks okay. Take you back to Joe and I here. So kind of just split screen, the real casual conversation. We kind of feel like we're interacting with you as audience members from this point here. Not to preview too much, but this is kind of our close cam. So we'll be showing you guys some, yeah, fair enough.
some gameplay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. Some gameplay. I was just reading the comments here as we go. So, and that's another thing too that we're kind of missing. So, Matt's saying the camera's good, and some people are spotting some things in the background. So we'll definitely get into this a little bit more. Then you could also just have a visual here with Joe and I talking. If we want to, we can kind of bring you guys out a little bit or in. You know, maybe we want to pop a miniature underneath here, and just happens to have a suppression token. I'm not sure where those tokens came from, but I'm sure Joe can tell us about those later. So just kind of bringing you guys in so you guys know what's going on here with the close cam. So hopefully the visual on that is looking pretty good for you guys as well. The reason that we kind of have this look here with the grid is we wanted to have the ability to kind of show you guys in actual measurable space without having to constantly put measurement templates on the table in terms of range rulers, so you guys can kind of get a visual what kind of range we're talking about. So. And then last but not least, we'll have some screen sharing capability here. So if I pop this up, you guys should be seeing a rules reference guide at this point. And then if I just pop us over to Tabletop Admiral, you guys should be able to see, you know, some cards on there. If I want to go ahead and start building out Grievous and start putting some things on him, you know, I can do that, and you guys should be able to be following along with that, as well as totaling up the points and kind of building along with us at home. So that's the visual demonstrations there. And let's just pop us back to Joe and I. Just got you guys catch up a little bit.
All right. Yeah. So good job, Sean, taking us through all that. Why don't we jump right into the meat and potatoes of this episode?
Okay. Sounds great.
All right, so last week we talked about Clone Wars core set rules and keywords that may or may not be new to the game. Some stuff that we've been seeing that's been confusing some of the newer players. I've been getting a lot of private messages asking me questions, and we certainly want to help with that. So we thought we'd spend, you know, a couple episodes here talking about new stuff, how all these new units function. And one of the discussions we had last week was regarding fire support. So we're going to kind of piggyback off that and expand on it just a little bit. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to add to that discussion before we jump into talking about the new support vehicles. So as you notice here, Sean has this demonstration put up where he's got two clone units. They both have face-up order tokens there. And then he's got a B1 squad up in that corner up there. And what you'll notice is the clone unit on the bottom right-hand side of the screen has 3 suppression on it. They also both have surge tokens on them from probably aggressive tactics on Obi-Wan. So the thing is, right now, that clone unit that has the 3 suppression, if they were to activate, first of all, they're very much... it's very possible that they could panic with 3 suppression. If they don't roll any of those suppression off, they're going to panic. Second of all, even if they do manage to roll, let's say 2 suppression off, they're only going to get 1 action. So if they wanted to shoot at those B1s right now, you'll notice that the shot is crossing over essentially like a piece of scatter terrain that functions like a barricade. They would be shooting B1s in heavy cover. The other unit in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, they don't have any suppression, and they're essentially behind a line-of-sight blocking piece of terrain. So what we wanted to demonstrate here is just a couple of techniques that you can achieve with fire support. So let's go ahead, Sean, and have you activate that unit in the bottom left-hand corner, not the suppressed unit.
Sure. So I'm just going to go ahead and move these guys here. I'm just going to use a range 1 template, keeping in mind that you guys would be able to use whatever range, speed template that you want. Obviously here, I can just move up to this corner, get contact, eliminate the cover, bring the remainder of my unit in behind this, and actually maintain heavy cover.
Those are like shorter stairs. It's kind of hard to tell, but they're essentially... They're like a barricade, basically. So everyone in that squad can now see, but they also are sitting in heavy cover.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to now, since you've taken your first action to move, if you now wanted to shoot at those B1s, the B1s are no longer in any sort of cover. And if you fire support with that second unit over there, you flip their token over, you don't have to worry about those 3 suppression, and you get to contribute your dice into the dice pool from the unit that you've activated. And now the B1 still will not have cover, because cover is determined from the unit leader of the squad that's activating, not from the fire support squad. So you're essentially getting the benefit of 2 things. 1, you don't have to worry about panic. 2, you're going to take a huge dice pool shot without any cover at B1s out in the open. So just for fun, we're just going to see what happens and just let Sean roll this, keeping in mind also that you have surge tokens, and those guys should be range 1 apart from each other, so they're able to share those tokens if they want.
Right.
So yeah, Sean, why don't you go ahead and roll those dice and see if we can one-shot these B1s?
Sure. So somebody had indicated you can hear me breathing on the camera. Hopefully, I'm a little bit further away. I have to kind of lean over to do this, so some of the technical stuff, but I do appreciate the feedback nonetheless. I'm just going to move this barricade for the purposes of this demo, so I can actually roll some dice here. So I have 6 white and 4 black from this unit. I have 6 white and 4 black from this unit. Give him a good old dice shake here, coming into the camera, and we'll give him a roll. Ooh, let's see what we got here.
It's a decent amount of paint.
Not bad. So I'm just going to slide all the paint here, and we'll get rid of all the extraneous stuff. I wish I had a few more surge tokens, because this is not near as many. Oh, I think that was one there. So I have 2. Oops, that was a surge. 2 surge here. Get rid of this guy. Another 2, another 1. So these surge are going to go away. We're going to spend up some surge tokens. We'll convert these to hits. And so not near as good as the test roll I did before, but nonetheless, we still have 9 going in here.
Let's see what happens. Can we one-shot these guys?
Okay. Slide those aside. We have 8 white dice, so we'll give these ones a roll, and if it matters, we'll roll another. Okay, Oof. So there we go. That's 2. So we're losing 6.
Yep, so just the unit leader.
Oh, we got 1 more dice to roll, actually. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yep. we lost 7. So let's just, for purposes of demonstration, there we go. That would be the remainder of that one.
So in our off-screen demo, I think Sean was able to one-shot him. In this demo, he wasn't.
13 hits on the off-camera demo. Of course, we knew that was going to be happening, but nonetheless, it's a nice way to reduce an 8-strong unit down to 1. Likelihood of being able to pick that up is pretty good. If it runs away, well, you'll relish the fact that you didn't roll enough dice there. So that's basically what we wanted to show you there. We also wanted to make sure that you guys were able to sort of pick up on what we're putting down in terms of the demonstrations, because it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to show it. Obviously, dice will vary, but I think you got the premise of how the fire support can work, how you can mitigate cover from one unit, how you can also mitigate a panic roll with another unit, again using fire support. So there's a couple things in that one small demonstration that sort of helps us get around that. So
totally. There's actually one more thing I wanted to touch on related to fire support, and that is an official ruling that we have found on the FAQ forums, which are like the official ruling forums on the Fantasy Flight website, where they clarify some questions about fire support. And actually any topic or any keyword interaction, you'll see those rulings come through from the developers from time to time. And they're considered official rules. So one of the things that they said is that a unit that's doing the fire supporting is not necessarily considered an attacking unit. So what you'll see Sean setting up here is we're going to kind of demonstrate like a limited visibility scenario. In limited visibility, the fire support unit doesn't have any range restrictions outside of what their range restriction of their weapon is. So if you'll notice, like they're outside of range 2, that unit in the bottom right corner. Normally, that unit would not be able to shoot at those B1s in a limited visibility scenario. However, if they fire support into that other unit that's range 1 away from the B1s, and they're still within range 3, which is their attacking range, they can contribute their dice via fire support, even in limited visibility. So that's a good thing to keep in mind too. I think this is going to become particularly relevant here on Friday when Captain Rex releases because of Scouting Party. So we're going to do an episode next week that's all about Rex and Dooku because we're really excited to talk about them. But just a little preview of some thoughts on that. Rex has Scouting Party. So essentially, if you take Recon Intel with Rex, you can scout 3 units out, speed 2, or potentially speed 3 on advanced positions. So you can actually be in range 3 firing range in limited visibility on turn 1. So that this tactic's actually going to become slightly relevant. So we're just going to kind of keep that in mind going forward. That is a rule, and it is something you can do. All right, I think that's all we really wanted to add to our fire support discussion. We're going to kind of move on now to talking about the support units in the core set. And we're first going to start out talking about Droidekas. So Sean, why don't you go ahead and pull up the Tabletop Admiral website with a picture of the Droideka unit card. And we'll just go through and talk about this real quick. So first thing you're going to note, Droidekas are considered a ground vehicle, not a trooper. So all of which you'll find underneath the picture in the upper right-hand corner, all of the rules that would apply to a ground vehicle are going to apply to a unit of Droidekas. So for example, the fact that if you're behind them, they provide light cover. If you're touching them and shooting through them, you're in cover, but you're denying your opponent cover because you're essentially in base contact with a piece of terrain. Because I think it says ground vehicles are treated essentially like a piece of terrain for all intents and purposes. The other thing is, like, you can't just walk through ground vehicles. So that's, you have to go around them. So that's something to keep in mind when we're looking at Droidekas. So the first thing you'll see is AI attack move. We talked about what this means last week. It just means that if you don't have a face-up order token, you either have to attack or have to move. You can do one or the other, but you have to do one of them as your first action. Okay, and then you'll notice they have three other new keywords that we haven't really seen. Well, we've seen shield, but shielded 4, generator 1, and wheel mode. So let's kind of go through. First thing we're going to talk about is wheel mode. So Sean, why don't you go ahead and bring up the demonstration that we were going to do for wheel mode. All right.
We should be there.
Okay, so why don't you kind of walk us through what we're seeing here?
Okay, so right now on camera, what you should be seeing effectively is 2 Droidekas. I have them positioned in a very straightforward position. You'll notice that the notches are facing the same way. They are within a speed 1 maneuver of each other, given the fact that you can do pivots. But I wanted to kind of show the distance that could be covered in wheel mode versus the walking mode. So right now, currently, they're both in walking mode. But the speed templates are giving you an indication. This one probably needs to clear that stair a bit more. The speed templates just give you an indication about how far you could move in each respective mode. Another thing we don't have out here, but of course to keep in mind, is the fact that they would have shield tokens. These are going to become quite important in a minute as we talk about when you can and cannot use shield tokens and when you can and regenerate them. All the things that go with shield tokens will come up in a moment. So this is what we have in terms of the layout. So now Joe is going to walk us through, and I'm going to sort of articulate the what he's talking about.
Okay, so I'm looking at the RRG on page 73, if you want to follow along at home. Wheel mode, unit keyword. A unit with a wheel mode keyword can transform into a swift wheel to traverse the battlefield rapidly. Okay, so here's what happens. At the start of the activation, a unit with a wheel mode keyword can increase its maximum speed to 3 until the end of that activation. If it does, until the end of the round, it gains cover 2, and it cannot attack, and it cannot flip active shield tokens. A unit can enter wheel mode only at the start of its activation. So keep that in mind. You're essentially activating, when you activate your unit, whether you gave it a face-up order or not, you immediately make the choice when you activate whether or not you want to enter wheel mode. So you can't do it after your first action.
Correct.
You have to do it right at the start of your activation if you want to do it. Okay. While in wheel mode, a unit cannot flip shield tokens to their inactive side to add block results while defending. So what's going to happen is you're going to carry those shield tokens with you, but you're not going to be able to spend them to block while you're in wheel mode. But you do have heavy cover. To indicate that a Droideka unit is using wheel mode, a player may replace their standing Droideka miniature with a ball form Droideka mini, or they can simply mark that unit with a wheel mode token. So some people like to pick up their minis and replace them for the dynamic feel of it. Other people don't. They don't like to touch their minis too often, or they're worried about it. And FFG welcomes you to use the token option or to allow you to physically replace the mini. It's really your choice. Both of them are in the rules, and both of them are legal, and I think that's cool. I personally am going to swap the mini out because I think it looks cool. All right. If the Droideka unit move during that activation, an expedient and accurate way to replace the minis is to place the movement tool in the front notch of the standing Droideka unit leader, which Sean is going to demonstrate right here. And the standing Droideka unit leader mini, but use the ball form Droideka mini to complete the move, removing the standing Droideka mini after the move. So this is like a good way to mark it. Kind of think X-Wing or something here. It's like you notch in the wheel mode mini there as he's showing, pick up the template, take the other one away. So that's pretty cool that they actually spell that out in the rules. But, I think a lot of people were kind of messing with that anyway. Okay, and then players should use the ball form Droideka minis only when the unit uses the wheel mode keyword, and only for the duration of that round. So no power gaming using wheel mode minis just because they have a lower profile. It literally says only if you're in wheel mode can you have that mini on the table. And only for the duration of that round. At the end of the round, any ball form Droideka mini should be replaced with standing Droideka minis. So yeah, a good way to do it is to notch into the back, take the mini, put the turret mini back in place. That way you kind of preserve the angle and you've done everything legally. So that's just kind of best practice. But basically to summarize this, what's going to happen is you activate, you choose whether or not you want to go into wheel mode right then and there, the second you activate. After you choose, if you do choose wheel mode, you get to move at speed 3. You don't get to take shots. You don't get to use your shields, but you do have heavy cover. And at the end of the round, you automatically go back to turret form. So it's not the end of your activation, it's the end of the round. And what that means is like the second you go back into turret form, your shield tokens come back that you had been saving, but also because of the generator 1 keyword, which we're going to talk about next, which is another keyword found on the Droideka, it says during the end phase, flip 1 inactive shield token. So essentially, every round, you're going to get 1 shield token back up to a maximum of 4. You can never have more than 4. And regardless of whether or not you've lost a Droideka mini, because they come as a 2-man squad, if you lose a mini and you have 1 left, it still has 4 shield tokens. It's not split 2 and 2. I think that's a common misconception we've been hearing. It's all 4 are always on the unit. So that's something we wanted to point out. And then yeah, let's talk about these shield tokens
Sure. Just
and
before
kind
we
of
do,
how they work.
yeah, just before we do that, Joe, what I'll do is I'm just going to show, because I had them kind of equidistant, I just wanted to show the difference between the Speed 3 and the Speed 1, just to kind of give you a sense on the tabletop about how much you're going to be losing distance-wise. I think a lot of people think that Speed 3 and Speed 1 are really significant, and they are in terms of the fact that you do move quite a bit more space. But what you have to keep in mind is you have the cohesion, which we'll talk a little bit about. They were equidistant, so if you consider these two unit leaders, the unit leader role did wheel mode and got this far. The other unit leader did wheel mode and got this far. But if you were talking about cohesion, you could see that this unit here could have a model cohesed back. This one could have one cohesed forward, and they would be very similar in position. The difference being of what you have the ability to do next. Truthfully, is the main difference here. So let's bring both of these guys up now as if they are in the same unit. We'll put the tokens here as we're talking about these things, and then we'll bring you guys in a little bit closer so it looks a little bit cleaner. All right.
All right, so let's talk about shield tokens. So we've seen shield tokens before because Sabine has the ability to take a shield token. But just for the new players or people who've never played against or with Sabine, let's just kind of cover what shield tokens actually do. So whenever a shield token enters play, such as during deployment, it enters play with its active side face up. So in the case of Droidekas, they're going to have 4 of them face up right at the start of the game when they deploy. And they're always going to have those 4 tokens. They're just not always going to be face up. When a unit flips an active shield token, the shield token is flipped to its inactive side and is considered inactive. When a unit flips an inactive shield token, that shield token is flipped to its active side and is now active. So pretty straightforward. It's a 2-sided token. Shield tokens are placed on the battlefield next to the unit leader that has those shield tokens. Pretty standard. We pretty much do that with every token in this game. All right. While defending against a ranged attack, during the roll defense dice step, before rolling defense dice, the defender may flip any number of active shield tokens. For each shield token flipped in this way, the defender adds 1 block result. The defender rolls 1 fewer defense die for each block result added in this way. So essentially, you're flipping shield tokens and spending them to just give you free blocks without actually having to roll dice, which is nice on a unit that rolls white defense dice to just spend tokens to get free blocks. Active shield tokens can be flipped to add block results only during ranged attacks, so that's important. You can technically melee a Droideka, but you cannot spend shield tokens on those melees. During the modified defense dice step, the attacker cannot use the Pierce keyword to cancel block results added by shield tokens. So essentially, if you only rolled like 2 successes and you had Pierce on like Pierce 1, and they want to spend 2 shields, they just negate that Pierce, which is huge. At the start of the roll defense dice step, before any other effects, if the attack pool includes the Ion X keyword, for each hit or crit result up to X, the defender must flip an active shield token if able. The defender does not add block results for the shield tokens flipped in this way. That's really big. We talked last week about this faction being vulnerable to Ion, like because they're droids. The B1 battle droids lose an action if they have an Ion token. Well, the Droidekas have a vulnerability to Ion as well, in that Ion 1 will just immediately delete 1 shield for a turn. Like, it'll immediately cancel 1 shield token. Certain game effects allow a unit to flip inactive shield tokens. While doing so, flip the shield tokens from their inactive side to their active side. So specifically, this bullet point is interesting because this is where Sabine differentiates from Droidekas. Droidekas don't get shield tokens back from recovering. Only Sabine does. I saw this a few weeks ago when people were in the local store were practicing before the Clone Wars even released. It was like people that got their stuff at Gen Con, and they were just treating droidekas as if they functioned like Sabine, and they were just like, okay, I'm going to recover, get all 4 of my shields back. That's not how that works. That's way too strong. So droidekas actually have a special keyword, which is generator 1. So during the end phase, which is the end of a round, you flip 1 inactive shield token. So they start with 4, they get to get 1 back every turn. Is basically how that all works.
While we're here, Joe, why don't we just talk about a couple things? Let's say, for example, that this was a unit and they were in wheel mode. Can you just talk about, if we go back to that example, if those attacks were coming in and I say had 2 shield tokens like I did at the previous, at the start of this demo, if those attacks came in, can I use these shields in this mode to cancel those hit results?
The answer is no. Instead, when you're in wheel mode, you're only benefiting from heavy cover, but you cannot spend shield tokens. Now, if you'll see in this example, Sean has 2 active and 2 inactive shield tokens. You're still banking those shield tokens. You're not going to lose those 2 active ones. You just can't spend them for that whole turn that you're sitting in wheel mode. At the end of the round, you flip 1 inactive back. Yep. You get that back because of generator 1, and then your wheel mode unit goes back to the turret mode.
Okay, so let's just continue this just a little bit more. I put a couple B1s back here for a specific reason. We wanted to talk about, all things droidekas here. So some of the things that I wanted to make sure that we're showing, especially new players. And Joe, I'll ask the questions as if I'm a new player, and then you can provide the answers if you don't mind. Let's say, for example, this is my unit leader here, and I want to move to this space here. Am I able to move freely through this unit as I can almost all other troop units?
So you cannot move freely through the base of a ground vehicle, like as he's demonstrating right there. You can't put your template over a ground vehicle. You'd have to slide in between them like that along the template.
So that is how I would have to get to that space if I was a droid player looking to move there. If I were to go over the stairs and these were treated as difficult, I could have done the same movement. However, I would be slowed, and so therefore, when I use this speed 1 template that I set here, you can see that I don't quite make it ahead of where I was. This is more advantageous to fit through. I purposely left this gap so that I could show that the B1s could move through. But at the same time, I also wanted to talk about what are the benefits of this particular unit here, Joe, in terms of, let's say there was well, let's just not say because we can set up, but let's just say I had a clone trooper unit over here with a few clones, and they were attempting to shoot at this B1 squad. You guys can't quite see that, so let me just back that out just a little bit. There you go. So let's say that unit was shooting. What sort of cover benefits might they gain from this position?
So ground vehicles provide light cover in this case. So droidekas are providing light cover to the B1 units behind them. Now remember, B1s don't gain any cover from suppression. So normally, if you had a suppression token on anything that wasn't a B1, it would get heavy cover from being behind a ground vehicle like that, because it's light cover from the ground vehicle, and then you improve your cover by 1 for suppression. In this case, droids don't get that benefit from suppression, but they still do get that benefit from being obscured by, a ground vehicle.
So in this case here, they're just going to take light cover. The suppression's adding nothing. However, they will add a second suppression if a successful hit comes through.
Okay, the other thing I kind of wanted to touch on here, and I think this is important, and you're kind of showing it already, but it's something we only first started seeing really with like speeder bikes and tauntauns, but we don't see it that often. Droidekas are a 2 model ground vehicle. So they have some wonky cohesion rules that are essentially a little bit different than the standard cohesion rules because they have notched bases. So, Sean, I know we were talking about this earlier. Why don't we take a look at the cohesion rules here and point out the differences that you have to follow with notched bases?
Okay, sure. So let me do this first. And the reason I'm doing this is because let me just show you a trooper unit would be fine to cohere in this distance. Agreed?
Right. So yeah, you can see that. Yes, exactly. So basically, the rules of cohesion say that you can, the distance apart you can be cannot exceed like a full speed one move. So those troopers that he showed, those are in legal cohesion. However, these droidekas right here are not. They're actually a little too far apart, and there's some specific rules under cohesion that explains like why that's the case. So I'll read it. This starts basically on page 22 of the rules reference. It's just like under cohesion, but they've added this blue bullet point to the most recent rules reference, probably because of droidekas. So it says when placing a mini in cohesion with its unit leader, that mini must be placed such that the distances between the mini and its unit leader could be made as a legal speed one move from the final position of the unit leader. So you saw that when he was showing the B1s. They were that exact max distance of cohesion. It says this means that when placing a mini in cohesion with a unit leader, it cannot be placed on the other side of impassable terrain from its unit leader. Okay, we've always done that, but here's where it changes. It says notched base minis must obey this rule. However, the speed one move between the mini's position and the unit leader's position is determined as if both mini and the unit leader can pivot up to 180 degrees before and after the move is measured. So Sean, why don't you go ahead and go back to those two droidekas?
Sure, because I was unsuccessful to get us to cohesion on the reference guide. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to...
Okay. So let's pretend that, just, all right, pick one to be your unit leader. Let's do the one on like the right-hand side. All right, so the first thing you have to do to determine this legal cohesion is you have to notch in your speed one, essentially. And this can be theoretical, like you don't actually have to go through all of this every time, but we're just showing you how this distance is actually like a little shorter than speed one.
You want me
All right, it can now make a full... Yeah, you can leave it like that, notched. It can now, for the purposes of cohesion, you treat it like it can pivot 180 degrees. So let's pivot it 90 degrees towards the other model.
That would be a little less than 90. There we go.
Yep.
Okay.
Or, yeah, whatever. Notch in.
I'm going to, for the purpose of this, notch this guy.
Yep.
That's the mark that we need to get to.
Yep.
Get out of the way. Notch in.
Yep. Notch the other guy in.
Well, he'll notch.
And then...
He'll go to there. This guy will move to here.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. But yeah, so basically, like, the distance itself, because of the two notches, and then you would, like, pivot them back, essentially.
Correct.
To be facing your original direction.
Yep.
The distance itself is really, like, about that far that you can keep them apart.
Right.
I don't know if that's super clear in this demonstration, but basically what we're getting at is it's not a full speed one move. It's about maybe a quarter inch or a half inch shy of that.
Well, here, I can just show you the slight difference. This would be excessive. And then this right here, to legally make that move, you're probably going to need to be about there, truthfully.
Yeah, and then, of course, like, you can move the template in any sort of L shape or whatever that you want, but you're not able to spread out as far as you could.
Right.
Like,
you can't set yourself up such that you're like at this extreme here, but you can definitely set yourself up in a stagger. As long as your notches are exactly facing the same direction, that's also important. You cannot cohere a unit like this.
Yep. You always have to match the exact angle of your unit leader with your second model.
Right.
So this has some gameplay implications that I'd kind of like to talk about. Just some kind of more high level stuff. But for example, you can use droidekas in such a way where they can actually block for you. So what you can do is, like, if you see how they're positioned right now, the two in the center of the screen, Sean, if you put some B1s behind them, just grab a couple B1s and just put them like behind them as if they're essentially like a barricade. Yep. So now, like, your unit, I want you to leave a little bit of a gap. What I'm trying to show here is, like, you can move your B1s through them, right? But you can't move something like a Tauntaun or something with anything larger than a trooper base through that gap. So now you can kind of, you can align yourself relative to terrain and stuff and kind of set up this little shield wall to protect the stuff behind it and still leave it so that things can move through and pass you, but might necessarily not be able to be charged by, let's say, a creature trooper or something like that. See, that Tauntaun can't fit through there. So that's like some high level kind of advanced tactic that it's going to be kind of hard to pull stuff like that off. But these are some of the interesting things you can think about as you're, building your skill set with the game and assessing terrain and assessing movement and stuff. That's just like a tactic you can do. So we kind of wanted to point that out. All right. Anything else you want to add to the Droideka discussion, Sean, before we kind of move on to the next unit? I'll take that as a no. I'm not hearing you say anything, so I'll take that as a no. All right, let's go to the next topic. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was the bark speeder.
Sure. Sorry, I had muted my microphone there just so you guys couldn't hear me as I was leaning over to do all the work there.
Oh, okay.
I think it's important to point out that we had a chat comment that refers to Tauntauns as ice kangaroos. So I thought that was great. So I threw that up on the screen there for everyone to see.
That's really accurate. That's exactly what they are.
Super. Okay.
Put Luke in their little pouch.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to bring up a bark speeder here on the screen for you guys to have a look at, just so we can frame our conversation in the sense that everyone will know what we're talking about. Oh, that's going to be tabletop. Where am I going here? Tabletop. Admiral. There we go. Boom. Oops, I think I spelled that incorrectly, but there we go.
All right.
Second, and we are going to build out, and you guys are looking for bark speeder. The images aren't there we go. Perfect.
Yep. Okay, so the bark speeder, it's a little different. It's a little different from a Droideka in that it is considered a repulsor vehicle instead of a ground vehicle. So there's a certain set of rules that come with that. We saw those on the speeder bikes. We see that on the land speeder for the Rebels. But this is the Republic's essentially repulsor vehicle. So one, they have the keyword Arsenal 2. We've seen this keyword in the game for a long time. It just means that you can fire 2 weapons simultaneously. They also have the static benefit of cover 1. And they also have the speeder 1 keyword, which means while moving, they ignore terrain at a height of 1 or lower. The thing about repulsor vehicles is that they have to make a compulsory move. So it's basically simulating the fact that they're always in motion. So their first action is going to be a full speed 3 move if they don't have a sidecar equipped, and we'll get to that in a second. Their first action is going to be a speed 3 compulsory move. That action is mandatory. Then they get to take their 2 actions from there. Sean, why don't you pull up one of their heavy weapons sidecar upgrades, just so we can point something out? What you'll notice on here, if you take a look at these upgrades for the crew, they have three options. They have the twin laser gunner, the ion gunner, and the RPS 6 gunner. All three of those are actually modeled with a sidecar, so it's your choice whether or not you want to hobby those on. But they have an interesting thing. It says all three of them say reduce your maximum speed by 1. So now you're only moving at speed 2 on your bark speeder instead of speed 3, and that includes your compulsory move. So it's like, I guess, simulating extra weight or something, or less agility because you got the sidecar. It's a little slower. So keep that in mind. That actually is like a kind of a big difference in distance and movability and stuff. A speed 2 compulsory vehicle is definitely a lot slower, and might need to take more time to set up properly. The one thing we really wanted to demo, because there's not a lot of new stuff here, and we're not going to like deep dive into a heavy analysis of like these dice pools or anything, but the one thing we did want to demonstrate, and this is something that changed quite a bit ago, but it might be new to some players, is that the way that like crashing works with compulsory vehicles. There's kind of a new rule that makes compulsory vehicles a little bit more forgiving, and Sean will kind of walk you through that here.
Sure. So just for purposes of this demonstration, this piece of terrain right here is, let me just set it this way, is actually above height 1. So you can see here that this would be something that the speeder would not be able to freely travel over using its move. So if, let's just say, for example, this bark speeder had no sidecar, it would have a compulsory 3 speed move. So just placing it here, if I were to fly the bark speeder, even though the nose fits under, you're going to notice that I do not get to the end, and I would crash into this piece of terrain. However, Joe will give you the rule here. So I'll just show you kind of roughly where that gets to.
So basically, what would happen is if this, let's say that bike started significantly closer to that building, and there was no way it could make it more than like 3/4 of the way past the template, it would actually crash into the building and take damage. However, the new rule essentially is it allows it to be a little bit more forgiving on this crash. What it allows you to do is at the end of your compulsory move, if you cannot fit, you are allowed to back the unit up exactly half of the length of its base.
So this I'll just move this. This would be a full speed. This would be half the speed. That would be where the unit gets to finish. The important thing being,
so now it does not crash.
Does not crash.
Yep. And then, like, okay, now you find yourself in a really tight spot. So maybe your first action, you take a pivot.
Right.
You know, that'll get you out of there from crash.
In this case, you're a little jammed up, but we wanted to use this piece of terrain just because it's above height 1. But yeah.
And really, the only thing that matters in this case is the base, not the actual nose of the Mini. That's just there for aesthetics.
Also important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Let's just back this up now.
Very important to keep in mind.
Just keeping in mind that if this had an equipped sidecar, and you were doing the compulsory speed 2 maneuver, you'd be doing the exact same thing. If you were too close and you would crash, you can still get the reversal of a half a base, even though your compulsory is reduced. So it's based on the compulsory that you have. That's determined by whether you have a sidecar or not. The ability to back up half a base is a rule that's applied to compulsory moves, and that will not be impacted. You don't get like a quarter of a base or anything. It's not diminished based on the speed that you have. But it's, I guess there's reasons that perhaps not equipping a sidecar, running a naked bark may be more advantageous. But right now, most of the barks that I'm seeing, probably Joe can attest, you're seeing some sort of sidecar variant. So most of you are probably moving your barks at speed 2. Just something to keep in mind. This is a stage of the game I think that's actually missed. I'm going to do a slight aside here. when you are assessing tables, a lot of people look for advantageous positions. They look for choke points, or alleyways or fire lanes. But there's not a lot of people that I see that actually pull out a range stick and actually go around measuring the heights of terrain. And probably because that's given the fact that we have very few units with jump, and not a lot of compulsory moves going on, at least since we moved from speeder bikes. But it's a good practice to get out there, take your sticks, and actually measure heights of certain terrains. For example, if I can just move this aside for a second here, let me just bring another piece of terrain here on camera. This one right here, for example. So this is a snow piece of terrain. This one is actually slightly below height 1, ever so slightly below, but nonetheless, these two pieces of terrain, although they at first glance probably look like they're the same height, there's only a subtle difference between these two. Probably, less than 1 inch. So at first glance, you may just discount them and say, oh, they're both height 1 or below height 1. But taking out the stick would actually determine for me as a player, this is just below and this is just above. And that's really important when you're talking about moving compulsory vehicles around and potentially crashing or not crashing.
Yeah, exactly. So those are, that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And you don't want to get yourself, if you're playing a compulsory vehicle, you don't want to get yourself in a trap where you're like, oh no, I didn't realize that was taller than height 1 and I'm now going to take a bunch of damage. You want all that information ahead of time. You want to know what your paths are going to be, and you want to assess that as you're going and try to make smart plays and smart movements, because honestly, compulsory vehicles are pretty challenging and pretty difficult to play. So it's one of those things that you really have to pay attention to. But I really like that. That was a good demonstration. I think that's important stuff to keep in mind. The other thing, just real quick, to talk about a few more things that happen on the compulsory move and why that discussion is still relevant. Again, you cannot overlap a ground vehicle's base. So there are ways, if you're playing multiple Droidekas or something like that, where you can, again, set up these little screens where you can deny like efficient compulsory moves, because those units are not going to be able to overlap your base. And, they have that freedom to back up a half a base length, but not always, so there's, yeah, see, like that's not really giving you a good place to go. You might have to make a much tighter turn that might, not allow you to shoot out of your front arc at those Droidekas. So yeah, that's a good thing. The other thing too to keep in mind is that while compulsory vehicles do displace units, like trooper units, they only do so on the compulsory move. When you're doing that compulsory move, you're allowed to land on top of trooper units and displace them. But once you've completed that compulsory move, you cannot displace with your next two actions. So that's also something to keep in mind. And Sean's showing that here on the video. So he's going to do his compulsory move. It's going to put him at the end where he's going to be touching those couple of troopers, displace them. They take a suppression for that. But after his first compulsory move, he's not allowed to do that to any other units, just on his regular actions. So I think that's all really we wanted to talk about with the bark. Do you have anything else you want to add, Sean? I know you're probably muted right now trying to move a bunch of stuff around.
No, I'm good. I should be back now. So no, I think we covered off a lot of it. I did want to talk, ironically enough, about a little bit of terrain here. So if you guys are seeing this one on camera right here, let me just tip this up. This piece was actually done in the latest tutorial. So if you guys check that out, it will probably be popping up on Legion Academy in the coming months for sure. But what I wanted to do is segue. This piece of terrain right here is actually going to, this style is actually going to be replicated through out these ruins here. So these are kind of at the preparatory phase. And this is actually going to be done up entirely in snow. It's going to coincide with my droids that will also be snow themed. But what I really want to get at is the fact that we're going to have some battle rep reports coming out very soon from Legion Academy, and we're really happy that we're going to be bringing a snow table. I think it's probably an under-designed table. We don't see a lot of them out there. I like how it pops on camera. I really like how the snow really stands out, and it doesn't really matter what color or basing style you have for your miniatures. They really come out and looking pretty sharp too. So we're really happy about bringing that. So I wanted to bring this piece of test terrain out just to show you guys tonight on stream, and let you guys know that that's upcoming. So I have a lot of inspiration here in Canada for winter terrain because we only have 2 seasons, winter and almost winter, and so. So I really get inspired about making winter terrain. So that's really important. I'm really glad that it shows up well on stream as well. So no, I think that's all we had in terms of kind of showing things under the camera.
Yep.
I did want to do another quick test while we're on here too, folks. Just again, you guys are kind of our beta testers here tonight, but I wanted to, if in fact we are going to be looking at, let's just say, for example, books or even unboxings. That's going to be coming with us too, or out from us as well. So we wanted to make sure you guys knew that, and hopefully you guys will appreciate some of the extra stuff that we're going to do. Again, that interactivity that we really want to bring you guys. We can talk about unboxing units, but there's a physicality, the textility of sort of picking things up, moving them around, manipulating them, showing you guys what's in the contents of the box. Lots of other people are doing it, but we wanted to contribute from our end as well. So look for that coming here on the Legion Academy as well. So I think that's probably it for under the close cam. So I'm going to take us out of here, and you guys can have a look at Joe and I for the remainder of the podcast here.
Yeah, so actually, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. It's one more keyword that comes. It's some people's favorite keyword, the critical X keyword.
Fair.
So critical X is a new keyword that we've been seeing recently. We haven't always had it in the game, but I think it's something people are a little confused on. In fact, I played a 500-point game this week. For our Clone Wars core set escalation league, where we're playing 2 500-point games and 2 800-point games. And my opponent was a friend of mine who used to play Legion during the initial core set days. He decided he wanted to focus more on competitive X-Wing. He ended up selling all of his Legion stuff, and then Clone Wars got announced, and he was like, I can't give this up. I love Clone Wars too much. I'm buying back in. I'm playing clones. I'm playing Legion again. So he split a core set, and he got his clone army. And we were playing our 500-point game. And the one thing I noticed that he kept forgetting, even though he does know the rules of the game and he was doing some really good tactics, was that he kept having aims with Obi-Wan and picking up his surges and re-rolling them. And I'm pretty sure he was convinced that, or he just was forgetting his critical X keyword, which in the case of Obi-Wan has critical 2. In the case of the DC-15 Clone Trooper, Phase 1, it's like a heavy weapon upgrade. It has critical 1. So if we're looking at, let's see what page of the rules reference this is on. I think this is on page 30. If you want to pull that up. It's the critical X weapon keyword. While a unit with the critical X keyword converts attack surges, it may convert up to X surge results to critical results. While using the critical X keyword, a unit still converts any surge results not converted with the critical X keyword according to their surge conversion chart. So that's where it gets interesting. But mainly what you'll notice is for the majority of the units, especially in the Clone Wars faction, or in the Clone faction, the Republic faction, they usually don't offensively surge. And I think the developers did that for a reason, because fire supporting into an offensive surge unit with a Z6 is pretty scary and ridiculous. So what they did was they put the critical keyword, like critical 1 or critical 2, on these units. And what that just means is when you roll your dice, let's say you have critical 1 on your weapon. If you see 3 surges, you take 2 of those away and you keep 1 of those surges, and that surge converts to a crit. That's all it is. It's just like limiting how many surge to crit you get, as opposed to every surge you see in your dice pool that you successfully roll converts to crit. So with Obi-Wan, he rolls 6 dice. If he sees 2 surges, those both become crits. If he sees 3 surges, 2 of them become crits and 1 of them goes away. That's all there is to it. Very simple. Nothing super crazy there, but just a reminder for the people that aren't familiar with how that keyword works. It's just like it just like kind of lowers your ceiling a little bit on how many surges you can convert.
I think it's important too, just to note that with the clone faction, there's a ton of surge tokens floating around as well. So there's that the ability to share tokens. However, keep in mind that only certain units can share and certain units cannot. But you get in the tendency of let's just say you think you're going to share because that's kind of a common practice, but then just keep in mind with who's actually able to share, who isn't, just to make sure that people aren't, opponents, just because, like I said, you get in the mindset, just make sure people aren't grabbing surge tokens to surge for, like Kenobi's rolls. He has to use his critical, and that's going to be 2 surges. If he has his own surge tokens, of course, he can use those in excess of critical too. So there is potential for Obi-Wan Kenobi to convert more than 2 surges by himself. But just keep in mind of all the mechanics and how they're doing that. And don't, with your clone units, don't necessarily you just grab your surge tokens willy-nilly. Keep in mind about who's activated, who hasn't, what the future activations are going to look for you, like in terms of your pre-planning. A lot of people will just grab surge tokens. Let's say it's the closest unit, so they just grab it. If you can grab a surge token from another unit that's maybe in a less advantageous position to use their surge themselves, keep a mind of your battlefield. I just see too often people are they kind of get excited, if you will, and they just start grabbing tokens up. But there should be a method to that, and you should have a strategy in terms of why you took tokens and how you're spending tokens.
Exactly. I completely agree. Right. And yeah, just don't accidentally waste surge tokens on Obi-Wan. Don't forget that he has critical too. Like Sean said, that's a good point. You don't want to do yourself any disservices by not taking full advantage of all your keywords. So just something to keep in mind, how that works. And another thing I think I've seen some people get wrong is some people think that if your card surges to hit and you spend a surge token, it then surges to crit. That's not the case.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but yeah, that's definitely not how that works.
I've heard people try to describe to me that it just upgrades your surge, and that's not. It doesn't say that anywhere in the rules. So I was just like, I don't think that's right. I just wanted to throw that out there in case anyone's mistaking that.
I think that's probably a good segue to just a general gaming thing. What I've seen a lot of times, especially when you get together at tournaments and you kind of bring like local scenes together, you really start to see and hear the way things are done elsewhere. And oftentimes what happens is maybe you have 1 or 2 ambassadors in the local area. And I'm not saying that they're doing a disservice, but maybe they have a slight interpretation of the rule. And so they teach everyone to play that way. And then what happens is you come to another scene where there's other players and maybe they have a different opinion about the rule, or they play the rule, I'll say correctly, if you will. And then you can have a dispute around something that's really quite clear, but not to fault the other person, not to jump all over them, because you don't know what context or frame of reference they're coming from. They may have simply been taught the rule incorrectly and therefore play it incorrectly. And I come across that all the time. It could be around like, oh, hey, can I cohere out of range 1 out of the deployment zone? Like my unit leader's there, but can I cohere out? No, you can't unless you have recon intel. Like there's just certain things that you just may see done differently based on how they were shown or how they were taught. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like there's a lot of pages of rules. A lot of some of the stuff we just remember through reps or through hearsay or word of mouth. So, it's easy to kind of mess some of those things up, and that's okay. But, that's why it's always important to, I keep a copy of the RRG, the latest RRG on my phone. It's pretty easy to access it from your phone, from the Fantasy Flight website, or print out a physical copy just to have something to reference, in case any of those questions come up. And don't forget the golden rule that if you guys just cannot agree on something, roll a red.
Yeah, or call a judge, I guess, if
Yeah,
you
call a judge, or if it's a casual game and you're disagreeing, it's not worth arguing about. Just say, how about blocks? It's my ruling. Surges and blanks, it's your ruling. Roll the red, see what happens, and just own it. I've
yeah.
had to do that several times with like cover and line of sight and stuff like that. So,
What I kind of like to do too, just maybe we'll kind of wrap it up here pretty soon. But what I like to do is if I get stuck on something, rather than kind of waylay the game and kind of hold it up or get into a contentious back and forth, I like to kind of make a little note about that. And you do that with your opponent. Like, let's just table this for now. Let's look this up after, and then let's co-educate each other afterwards. It's not about I'm right, you're wrong, or you were right, I'm wrong. It's about like, hey, let's look this up after. Let's play it as it is now. We'll put a little asterisk on this game. We'll look it up, and then we'll both know for next time. And I think if you do that more often, then that sort of permeates in your local scene where people are getting things more often right than wrong, or just kind of playing through. So
totally. Yeah, I completely agree with you. That's all good stuff. That's good community building information, especially for the newer players that this might be their first hobby game.
yeah, absolutely, for a hobby
So
game for sure.
there's a lot of yeah, there's a lot of rules in this game. So we're still all trying to remember them and get them right. So
Right.
all right, everyone. Well, I think that'll kind of wrap it up. I just one more time want to get hyped.
Awesome. Co-hosting with the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
I feel pretty proud. Yeah, for
I
sure.
was I was happy to see that people were actually going to be taking off work to try to watch it at like noon tomorrow. That's hilarious. I'm not that hardcore, but that's the first thing I'm doing the second I get home. I might even leave work a couple hours early. We'll see.
Wow. I will. I'm glad you put that out on the internet. So yeah,
Yeah, maybe that wasn't a good idea, but
getting sick
whatever.
here. Yeah, getting sick. Yeah, it's
All
coming
right.
on. So don't watch The Mandalorian tomorrow at work, but definitely watch the the podcast. So if you need to burn up some lunch hour time or work time, whatever have you. So well, hopefully it was a
All
successful
right. Well,
test.
yep. Thanks for tuning in, guys. You'll probably see us before the end of the week with some more stuff. Maybe not a full length episode like this, but we're going to just try to be coming at you with more content more frequently, even little 5-10 minute things here and there. We got the YouTube channel going. You'll see a lot more of us coming up, and we got a lot of cool stuff in the works. So thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we hope you have an amazing week.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.